Hello, and welcome back to Therapist Plays Slay the Princess. Okay, so now that we have been deeply, searingly traumatized by our last run of this game, we've seen how reacting to the first emotion that we have doesn't always lead to the best outcome, and how sometimes our decisions can even seem contradictory to one another. This time, we're going to try to be a little more consistent, while also breaking down why these sort of contradictions happen in all of our decision making. This game continues to be just the perfect canvas for exploring human behavior and all of its weird inconsistencies and how we're just trying to sort out, at the end of the day, what the right choice is to make. So, today's episode, we let ourselves be guided, not by anger, not by fear, but by love. I hope you enjoy. Hello, and welcome back. Okay, so here we are again, on the path to slay the princess. And after the absolute trauma that we endured in the last episode, I think we really need to evaluate our approach here. Which I actually do think that the process we're going through in this playthrough is not unlike that of therapy, which is sort of thematically appropriate. Which is that sometimes the process of personal development and healing is about rupture and repair. And every time you rupture, you sort of learn more about what caused those ruptures to begin with, and how to prevent them. Now, we're not supposed to rupture that hard in the process of therapy, but we are supposed to learn similar kinds of lessons, which is, it's time to do sort of like an unpacking of where we are in this playthrough, what we've actually learned, and why the approach has not been successful. And I will say, do keep in mind that this is all a role play, right? So Brady, the person, the therapist, is not always going to be making decisions based on what Brady, the therapist, the person, might actually do. I'm trying to make decisions based on what I think the state of mind of my character would make. For example, right? Like when we met the princess with the blades on her hands, like, many people were like, how could you trust her? Like, obviously I don't trust her, but I think that my character in that state of mind, not being able to trust the narrator, not feeling super sure about the voice of the cheated either, would be looking for like anyone to trust, right? And our confirmation bias, my confirmation bias as the hero, is probably that the princess must be fundamentally good underneath whatever presentation we're seeing, right? Due to the idea of like what our schematic of a princess is and her circumstance, and like there is an assumed good nature about that. Like she's a damsel, right? It's the archetype that we're leaning into. So we have our own confirmation bias that there must be something we're missing. Like even when she's overtly not trustworthy, right? However, just like we talked about with the choice theory, there is an incompatible thought with she must be good, there must be something trustworthy, with, at the same time, we're hearing from the narrator from the very beginning, she's not trustworthy. And that's the first voice we've heard, right? So it's been planted in our mind that we may actually be in danger. And so we can be in this sort of superposition of, I want to trust her no matter what. I don't want to believe that she is of bad nature, even though it's super obvious she sometimes is. And yet I am concerned there's a chance she is dangerous. Which is why, until this point, we've been taking the blade every single time, right? There's like the superposition from the archetype belief, the princess must be good, but what if she's not? I want to be prepared, right? So it's made sense to me to be in that mindset to like, take the blade. I'll always take the blade, right? However, I also said last time, I don't trust myself with the blade. And I certainly don't now, seeing that, like, basically every time we've held the steel implement in our hands, the only thing we've implemented is our own insanity and destruction. So, we have we've ruptured and ruptured and ruptured, and now it's time to repair that idea. Which is, I think that it's time that we try. Maybe we don't take the blade this time. Maybe we're learning a little bit more about how this world works, and the idea that the princess that we get and the disposition of the narrator are sort of born out of the perception that we enter with, right? Sort of piecing that together. Like I said, it's kind of obvious to me, but I'm role-playing the perspective of the character's sequence of discovery, right? So this time, that's what we're gonna do. And I think that that's probably gonna be one of the themes of this episode in our discussion about it, which is, why do we sometimes have incompatible beliefs? I just wanna talk to her, but I also kind of wanna have this blade with me, which sort of puts us in a position where she's not really gonna be that trustworthy to us, right? Because humans are fundamentally contradictory. I think that's what we'll explore this time. I have a feeling that that's going to come into play. So, this time we're not going to play much with the narrator. We know what the storyline is. We have a clean slate. It's time to go to the cabin and see what happens when we don't take the blade.
You make your way up the short path to the cabin. You'll find the princess within.
Yes, we will. What kind of princess remains to be seen.
We're not going to go through with this, right? She's a princess. We're supposed to save princesses, not slay them.
So this is what I'm getting at, right? The hero's fundamental belief is that, like, I am a hero. That is what I'm supposed to do. We're supposed to save them, not slay them. But imagine you're entering this world and the first thing you're being told is that your purpose here, in the context of this, to slay the princess, is fundamentally the opposite of what your purpose as a living archetype is. It would confuse you too, right? You'd be like, I kind of want to see if I can reason with her, but I also think she could be dangerous because that's what's being put in front of us.
Ignore him. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
We're getting mixed messages, and so our inclination is to try to fall somewhere in the middle. What if I take the blade for defense? Let's see if she can be reasoned with. It hasn't really worked out so far. We've seen the we've seen the results of that, so we're going to try. Now we know that even when we've fucked up a lot, we will still end up back here. So we're much more willing to experiment with something different this time. You'll need it if you want to do this right. Like, we're being led into thinking that you could be doing something wrong. Your first real decision, right? We've learned that lesson now. Let's just enter the basement and see what we get.
The door to the basement creaks open, revealing a staircase faintly illuminated by an unseen light in the room below. This is an oppressive place. The air feels heavy and damp, a hint of rot filtering from the ancient wood. If the princess really lives here, slaying her is probably doing her a favor.
Another thing to consider is that, like, reinforcement works. Like, the more times you hear an idea, the more likely you are to assume there is more truth in it, right? Even if the truth is illusory. There's a thing in educational psychology called the illusion of mastery, which is basically the idea that we get, which is, if I've seen this before, then I must know it, right? And I face this all the time when I'm teaching class, because I do therapy, but I also teach similar stuff that we're talking about here. And sometimes, you know, my clients who are in those group therapy lessons, they'll be like, oh, I've seen this before. I know what you're going to teach about cognitive distortions. I've heard about that, right? Maybe they've come across it before, that term. And they sort of tune out. They have the illusion of mastery that if I've seen this before, I must know it. The more times that the narrator presents us ideas about, you're here to slay the princess. That's all she's here for, right? There's a blade. It's the only thing around. It's for you, right? Slaying her is doing her a favor. Like, you can see how we would want to try to sort of play out both sides of the equation here, right?
Her voice softly carries up the stairs.
And now I gather that the princess is probably not going to be like we saw her before, like immediately hostile. Because her voice wasn't very soft last time. I bet at this time it probably will be.
Hello? Is someone there?
Yeah, actually in distress, maybe.
It's hypnotizing. It's the kind of voice you only have to hear once to remember it for the rest of your life.
Let's see what we find.
Don't let it fool you. It's all part of the manipulation. You're playing a dangerous game by coming here unarmed.
Reinforcing that message. My character might be thinking now, maybe I should have taken the blade. However, we know what happens, right, if we take it. Plenty of you have also been saying in the comments that the hero doesn't remember, like, the past sequence from the Razor's point of view. I'll just be real with you. Like, it's more interesting for me to play it as if we do remember. Like, I'm not telling the story of this game in this Let's Play. Like, you've played the game if you're watching this, most likely. I'm telling the story of me playing it. Like, this is the theater of our character, who I sometimes slip into the voice of. If you see me making choices that you're like, why are you doing that? Like, I'm playing a character here, right? I'm trying to get into the mindset of what I'm seeing here, right? I think it's more interesting if we assume knowledge of the past, right? We'll continue down the stairs this time. We're still unsure.
Good. You're still listening to reason. It would be better if you had a weapon, but you may still be able to do what needs to be done.
The narrators constantly sow that doubt that coming in here without a blade is a fool's decision.
You walk down the stairs and lock eyes with the princess. There's a heavy chain around her wrist, binding her to the far wall of the basement.
Something I also noticed. The music did not change into the tense sort of horror vibes that we were getting before, right? It's remained this sort of somber melody about, like, traveling through the forest. It's the same melody from the beginning. So our perception not only creates our reality, but it also creates our mood.
She's beautiful. How could someone like this be a threat to anyone?
It's a good question, hero.
I am begging you to stay focused. There's a lot riding on you here.
You know, but the sort of paralanguage of the game is not telling me that, narrator. The music is not dark and sinister anymore. I feel calm and open-minded.
Hi. Do you think you can get me out of these chains?
Hold on, let's talk a bit first.
Okay.
Shit! I'm immediately getting the vibe that I'm not coming off quite as earnest about my intentions here. I'm still a little bit skeptical. What reason do I have not to leap to her rescue, basically? You can see that even still, the reason we have these explorative statements is because the hero is coming in, even without the steel implement, with two messages in his mind. The hero is here to save. The narrator says, I'm here to slay. What's your name?
Oh.
She pauses, carefully formulating her words before she responds.
You can address me as Your Royal Highness. Or you can just call me Princess if Your Royal Highness is too formal.
Okay.
Is Princess her name or her title? What if it's both? Could you imagine being named Princess?
Focus, hero. Don't let your intrusive thoughts distract you. Let's see what we got here. I just can't trust you. Things don't add up. It's not worth the risk. Can go and retrieve the blade. So I don't know how deep the decision-making trees go in this game. I assume they're quite labyrinthian. And we'll return to explore alternatives. Once I feel satisfied that we've told an interesting narrative of me experiencing like sequence after sequence and making decisions based on the past, we will just kind of play through some, you know, deliberately choosing things we've chosen before and trying different outcomes just to see where it goes. But we're still going for a coherent narrative right now. And I'll let the just like with the skeptic, a lot of people were like, why did you grab for the chain link, even though the skeptics was clearly wrong? Because I'm letting the characters decide here, right? It's like, I think this would be a really boring playthrough if I just made every decision logically and coldly deduced the clear outcome. It's much more fun to let these weirdos play it out, right? And right now the hero's thoughts are on why her name could be Princess. Is that your name?
Like I said, you can call me Princess if you'd like.
It's a little suspicious, Princess. Although it's not that suspicious. I mean, we don't have a name. Our name is Hero.
I'm sorry, I've been down here so long, I guess I've just forgotten. I must have a name, though. Everyone has a name.
That's right.
Okay, that's weird. She hadn't even thought to pick a name for herself. Hopefully you're starting to see that she can't be trusted. Go back upstairs, get the blade, and slay her before it's too late.
Again. We believe two things at once here. A superposition of values. She must be truthful, and circumstance. There's a lot of things telling me she may not be. Well, I don't know anything about you. For all I know, you could be locked up here for a reason. Could keep her locked up. We can go back and get the blade. I think despite the intrusive thought of self-doubt, our character at this point is like in firm rejection of, I don't want any of these fucking voices to emerge. They're too chaotic right now. I just want to follow my own path. And despite lingering suspicions, I'm just going to try to get her out of here. You can already see there's a bit of hesitation. Don't make me regret this. Princess.
You're only making this more difficult.
It's all right, narrator. I've made my decision.
Thank you, and you won't. I promise.
Right.
Making a huge mistake. No, you're doing the right thing.
That's right.
You walk up to the chains binding the princess to the wall and give them a tug. They're large and heavy, far too solid for you to even imagine trying to break them apart.
Yes, now becomes the question of how are we going to relinquish the princess of her shackles?
I'm guessing you don't have the key?
It's a good
Maybe
guess.
Somewhere upstairs. Doubtful. Whoever locked the princess away down here intended for her to never see the light of day. They wouldn't have just left the key to her chains somewhere in the cabin.
No, they wouldn't. There's no key. Do you have any other ideas?
Maybe there's some way to break the chains?
You know, the way she's looking at me makes me feel like I will do basically anything for her.
If that doesn't work, I guess we can always cut me out of them.
It's a little bit of razor underneath that doleful demeanor, princess. You know, I will also say, guys, there's a little bit of all of this stuff I have to say about trust and paralanguage and confirmation bias. I'm sure we're all susceptible to. You know what invalidates a lot of that? People are much more likely to trust others that they are attracted to. That's like pretty much top shelf in terms of like immediate trustworthiness. And then we sort of go down the list and challenge if that's enough to trust, or if there's enough behind that for us to say, you know, she is kind of hot, but she could have blades for wrists.
She offers the suggestion with almost complete nonchalance. If we were stuck down here long enough, I'm sure we'd be nonchalant about cutting our way out if it meant we could finally be free.
That's true. She could be under a lot of stress.
You attempt to make your way out of the basement, but the door at the top of the stairs slams shut. You hear the click of a lock sliding into place.
Okay.
Is someone else here?
Hey! Let me out of here.
Shouts and pleas are met with silence.
Shit.
I'll repeat myself once again. You're here to slay the princess. And
You know, though,
until the task is done.
the more insistent, the less that reinforcement feels like something I can buy into. It did up until now, where I feel like I'm being trapped in here, right? Let's try the door.
Try the door, but it's locked from the outside.
Okay. My anxiety is going up. Let's return to the bottom of the stairs.
You make your way to the bottom of the stairs. This would have been so much easier if you'd just taken the blade like you were supposed to. Easier for whom?
Yeah.
Easier for everyone. Look at the mess you're in.
We are in a mess. I'm sure the princess will have a bright idea.
I heard the door slam. They locked you down here too, didn't they?
Yes. Now she and I are in the same circumstance, which also it makes things a little bit easier to trust people. This is a sort of a part of like in-group versus out-group dynamics. Like we tend to trust more when we have what's called universality, which is just the ability to perceive that someone else is going through something that we're also going through. So like when I do group therapy, for example, that has a different angle to it than individualized therapy. And there is some psychological relief just from the idea that all of these people are here for the same purpose, for wellness or development or safety or meaning or whatever it is, right? That universality communicates in sort of subconscious way relatability and trustworthiness.
There's a slight panic rising in the princess's voice.
I'm starting to panic as well.
If I could just get out of these chains, I know we could force our way out of here together.
Okay, now the music has changed.
She barely hesitates before raising her arm to her mouth, her teeth tearing through her limb with the determination of a trapped wolf.
Why? I thought that we were gonna get a normal one for once. Fuck, what did I do? Now I'm second guessing everything. Again, what micro decision led to this? If I let a little bit of skepticism in, I get a fucking weird situation.
As she rips her flesh from her bone, a sound comes from behind you, the clang of bouncing metal.
I wonder if the survivor or was it the survivor? No, the hunter. The hunter or the hunted? One of those was sort of the voice communicating survival needs, right? Now that we are in the same position as her, I'm wondering if that's not the angle we're going to come up with.
It's the blade from upstairs. You're not sure how it made its way down here, but if there's a time to strike, it's now.
Even when I don't take the blade, it emerges for me.
We could use it to free her. You won't like what happens if you do that.
I'm gonna save her. I'm committing to this idea. We sort of have leaned more into there's got to be fundamentally something good about her. But I also wonder, like, why didn't she chew herself out before this? Fuck it, she's already halfway there. Let's finish the job.
Fine. Against your better judgment, you place the blade against the ragged, self-inflicted wound on the princess's arm, just above the unyielding chain binding her to this place.
Trying to help.
Cut into her flesh.
I don't feel good about this.
The blade is sharp, and it takes little effort to crack through the bone of her arm. Her limb falls to the ground, and the heavy chains follow suit. She didn't so much as utter a sound through the whole ordeal.
Yes. Very curious now.
She didn't.
And this time the narrator's not taking control and trying to make me kill her, so let's see what we get.
She smiles softly as her gaze meets yours, blood from her wounded arm dripping rhythmically to the ground. How is she still smiling after everything? It's like she isn't even bothered by what just happened.
Yes. That's a great observation, hero.
Thank you. Now let's get out of here.
Okay. Approach the locked door.
No, we won't have any of that. The stakes are too high. You can't just let her escape into the world. No, I can't just let her escape into the world. As the
Damn it!
princess approaches the bottom stair, your body steps forward and raises the blade.
I want to resist.
This isn't fair. You can't just do that.
I feel like I am ultimately just going to become skeptical.
What are you doing?
I can't help it. Warn her.
Stop that.
Hey.
Something's come over you, hasn't it? You know you don't have to do this, right?
That's right, princess. See my own better nature.
Your body lunges forward, the blade held low, ready to sink into her heart. But the princess dodges, stumbling back against the wall before the blade has a chance to connect.
Good.
Stop it. Stop trying to resist me. I'm trying to get you out of here alive.
I don't believe you. Resist.
The blade. Move the blade.
I can't.
As your body remains frozen in stubborn resistance, the princess takes a cautious step forward.
What shall we do?
We both know this isn't you.
That's right.
She nervously reaches towards you and takes the blade from your infuriating hands. What are you doing?
I'm curious now if she puts me out.
I'm sorry. I'll try to be quick.
What mistake are we making here?
She plunges it into your chest.
Damn it!
Through flesh and sinew, it is agony. But you aren't dead yet.
You can see also, yeah, not really wanting to look at what she's doing. She truly believes that this is the only way.
Oh no, I'm so sorry.
Stay strong. We can tough it out until it's done. For her sake.
We're doing this for her. That's right.
For her sake? Don't you start pretending that dying a painful death is some sort of heroic gesture. The two of you have literally doomed everyone.
I am a hero. This is my purpose.
Whatever. She sinks the blade into your chest again and again and again, and you feel every inch of burning pain that slices its way into your body.
I'm sorry.
That's like what I was saying in the last episode. I find myself really relating to this princess, like, just the agony of like, I'm sorry I've done this.
She doesn't know how to use a knife, does she? Apparently not. Though it doesn't matter how sloppy her blade work is, does it? A stab wound is still a stab wound, and it won't be long before you bleed out.
Damn.
I'm so sorry.
With one last thrust of the knife, your legs give out beneath you. You collapse to the floor, your blood pooling around you, your limbs unresponsive. The princess stares down at your ruined chest as tears carve rivulets of pink down her blood-spattered cheeks.
So this is the perfect time for to bring the Brady board out, which is my my analysis. Okay. I want to break down what I was talking about earlier about what the contradictory nature of some beliefs, right? The thing is people, we like to think that we're very consistent. That's like how we kind of define ourselves in our identity. We don't just like go through the world, making decisions around a certain ideology and then shift wildly towards other things. We're not very good at making like complete reversals on personality or behavior. Like think about an airplane, right? Like an airplane travels in one direction, and if it needs to turn, it needs to like bank in the other direction. It can't just reverse, right? There will be so much whiplash. And so we as people tend to fail when we try to change paradoxically, right? Which is unfortunately the approach we often take. We say to ourselves, Well, I've been so cynical lately. I've been really negative. I'm just going to be more positive. Okay, this doesn't really work very often. We miss the substance of how to actually become positive that makes that behavior change possible. I've been so lazy lately. I'm going to be highly disciplined today. I'm going to make a plan and I'm going to try to invert my behavior. We've not learned the lessons that make banking this behavior possible, right? So changing paradoxically does not work. Success in change exists in the margins between smaller behaviors over time, right? So this is not a successful approach to change, right? However, that puts us in this, like I said, a superposition of confusion about like, okay, but if I want to change in some meaningful way, I have to look at like where the inconsistency lies. If I've been lazy and I want to be positive, or if I've been cynical and want to be positive, lazy and want to be disciplined, what's the actual paradox here? The problem is we're also not very good at insightfully guessing. So here's your fundamental understanding about people and why you have already seen some paradoxical decisions in myself and in what we're seeing right now. We like when things agree. When they don't, we force them to. Okay? We will come up with distortions, cognitive distortions, self-deceit, delusions, even just minor bending of our perception to find a forced agreement where a natural one doesn't exist. I'll give you a couple examples. People all the time, when they're trying to change their diet, will do things like, well, I worked out really hard today, so I can, have a big dessert later. These are incompatible behaviors. They're not consistent at all. They don't agree, so we find a way to force them to agree, which is to tell ourselves that, well, there will be an opportunity for correcting this tomorrow. Even though that's just not how it works, right? We make this incompatible behavior make sense when it doesn't. Rather than actually change the behavior, we change our perception to make the behavior make sense. Here's another example. You can see that my apartment is quite neat, right? It would be interesting, but not uncommon, to see someone like me, and I do see this come up in therapy sometimes, who has a neat apartment. There aren't cat toys laying on the floor. There's not, snack wrappers lying out. Things are sort of put in a logical, aesthetic place. Might even tell you something a little bit about my personality. Maybe even that I'm a bit of a minimalist, right? However, let's imagine you got in my car and you found that there were empty water bottles in the passenger seat, that there were gym clothes lying in the back seat that probably need a wash, an expired air freshener hanging off of the rear view mirror, and that generally it was pretty dusty, okay? It's not any of those things, but imagine it was. It's actually not very uncommon to see stuff like this, and our brain immediately looks at that and says, hey, these two things don't agree. Like, your personality doesn't seem like the type where you'd have like highly structured behaviors and like logical reasons for how things look and appear in one area of life, and then go into another area of life and see like chaos and neglect. We do see this though. Usually this is people coming into therapy, not for problems like this, but for other similar incompatible behaviors where they are coming in with, I really want to change, but I just can't stop. That's what addiction is, right? I know this thing is bad for me, I just can't stop doing it. These two behaviors don't agree. Intention and action, incompatible, right? The problem is that instead of critically looking at that, we will find forced agreements and we'll say things that make it make sense. We make it make sense, right? We'll say things like, well, I don't live in my car. I don't spend a lot of time in my car. You know, I'm only there for maybe 20 minutes of the day when I'm commuting. It's not really that important to have it be so neat as a place where I reside. I don't live in my car. I don't have to worry so much about the cleanliness. It doesn't have to look presentable unless someone comes over. Like, I'll make some sort of justification to force reality to bend to my perception, rather than reckon with the fact that my perception is skewed somehow in the favor of not changing the behavior. And we just do this all the time. It's a guarantee that you're doing it with something in your life where instead of really understanding why you have two incompatible behaviors, something about your perception lets those things have a forced agreement. So another example, I used to work across the street from a yoga studio, right? Again, the kinds of people who go to yoga, they care about wellness, they care about physique, they are probably pretty disciplined, they're doing a hobby that's like kind of hard to maintain, and there's all kinds of things we could assume about their personality. I like to observe people and I observe their behavior, right? So sometimes I would see, every once in a while, people would walk out of the yoga studio and they take a smoke break. And then they go back in, and because it was, sitting on the waterfront, you could see through the glass window, there's the same people going out on their smoke break and going back into yoga. I don't know about you, but to me, that doesn't make a lot of sense, right? It doesn't really agree, like, to be the kind of person who cares a lot about their wellness and is about to engage in a lung expanding activity, something really demanding, and then go do something that's going to constrict their capacity to breathe. Yoga is supposed to be something that addresses your anxiety, and smoking is something that physically raises it, but mentally reduces it. And now you can start to see that, well, I smoke because it keeps me calm. It doesn't physiologically, but the cognitive effects of the nicotine do for some people, right? We just make shit up. We make up reasons for incompatible behaviors to coexist, okay? And I will tell you why we do this, but I wanted you to understand first that we do it. And this is why you can see us making half decisions like, I'm here to save her, but I'll take the blade. I don't want to do this, but I'm gonna do it anyways. Like, the princess is having to hold, like, look at her. She's completely distraught. Her personality is not murderous. She's not the razor. And yet she sees this as the only possible way to get out of this. She's holding the idea that this isn't really you, but you're not in control of your actions. I wouldn't really do this, but I have to, right? The confusion around this question of how do I make myself a consistent, complete person leads to a lot of imperceptions. And I'm going to summarize all of this up to say that the ways that we distort reality to fit our perception are called defense mechanisms, right? That's what they're called. However, that is not their original name. I'll give you a little history of psychology here. Before they were known as defense mechanisms, they were known as ego defenses of the ego. And the ego was Sigmund Freud's idea that we have an id, an ego, and a superego, right? And the very simple version of this is id was our primal basic desires, hunger, survival, lust. The superego was our appeal to what's justified, rational, virtuous, like our perfect conception of the world and what we should be in it. Well, we can't live in our primal desires, and we can't really live in utopic ideals. So the ego was there to moderate these two things into some semblance of like what reality said, reality is something between, yeah, fucking just do whatever you want. Like, just do whatever makes you happy and be lustful and fucking kill everything. To, no, everything is about making the right choice, right? The ego was to moderate these things and come up with what reality says is some mix of all of this. Now you can see that an ego defense was when we fundamentally cannot reconcile this reality, and we sort of slip into appeals to one of these sides, right? An ego defense was a way of defending the ego from recognizing reality, right? It was things like projection, where the best way I've heard it described is you think that you're looking at a window, but it's actually a mirror. I think that this person's being unreasonable, but really it's me that's being unreasonable, right? Projection. In reality, I am being an unreasonable person, but instead of recognizing that, I distort reality and I say, no, it's you that's being unreasonable. My ego is defended against recognizing its own fault, right? You can actually think of this as the whole iceberg analogy, right, that Freud made, where your conscious mind lives up here and your unconscious mind lives down here, right? And that most of the mind is built up of unconscious desires and beliefs and whatever. And when something is coming up to the surface, some realization, some insight that, you know what, maybe it doesn't make sense to smoke and then go do yoga, or maybe it doesn't make sense to go into the basement with the blade. Sometimes, through psychological insight, that idea emerges and becomes a part of the conscious mind, and we can move forward from that and understand what needed to change. However, this waterline is sort of that boundary of the ego. And when we have a cognitive distortion or a defense mechanism, it basically prevents this insight from happening and sends it back down. Suppression, repression, projection, right? Denial, displacement, all of these like classic defense mechanisms, they are mechanisms by which we defend our ability to perceive reality and stay inconsistent.
Can't just end like this, right?
So this is what we're going to see a lot of. Now that we are trying to be more consistent as a character, it's going to be more and more confusing that we try to have multiple extreme beliefs. Like, I'm trying to do the right thing, but clearly doing the right thing leads to not surviving, right? And I think that's also where some of these voices come from. They emerge at the boundary of this waterline, either to override our perception of reality and say, this is what's really going on, in the case of the skeptic, or in the case of the hunted or the cheated, right? They're the cheated and the hunted live sort of down here. The hero and probably some of the other ones, they live more up here, right? And we're just constantly in this fluctuation of like, what's real, what's not. And that's what the process of therapy is all about, right? Is sorting this shit out, helping people identify what their inconsistent behaviors are and making them make sense. Not forcing them to, but actually changing the behavior so that they do. So, that is one of the themes that I think we're going to see a lot more of as we probably die here and try this again.
Oh, that's rich coming from you. As much as I'd prefer for things to have gone differently, I can't deny the reality of what's happened. The two of you made your choice. It's over.
Guys, I'm starting to think I actually have fucking psychic powers. I can't deny the reality of what's happened. I swear to you that I do not play these sections before I talk about them. Like, just look at the history of my channel. It took me, I'm not even done with it. It's taken me a year to play Disco Elysium. I do not have the time to like pre-play this shit and then perfectly time my commentary to the game's narration. Like, it's just this weird confluence of the game's train of thought and my own that's bearing out in front of you. It's starting to get really weird, actually. But it does point out something interesting, which is that the narrator sticks pretty close to reality. We'll unpack the narrator's psychology at some point, because we've seen a lot of interesting things from it, but so far it's really consistent. It sticks to its mentality about what the objective here is. The only time it changes its mind is when it's presented with new objective information. For example, when it was like, the razor doesn't have a blade. There's no way she has a blade. It was right to assume that. She didn't have a blade in her hands. She had one in her fucking skeleton. And then when it saw that, it was like, oh yeah, I guess she does have a blade. It's willing to correct itself based on reality, right? It updates its perception based on new information. You and I do not do this all the time. We exclude new information to keep our biases in inconsistent harmony, right?
Everything goes dark, and you die.
Okay. New strategy. We've got the damsel.
You're on a path in the woods, and at the end of that path is a cabin.
Now let's see what voice we get this time.
Is a princess.
Kind of curious. Part of me thinks it's going to be the hunted just because of the survival angle.
You're here to slay her.
Let's see.
If you don't, it will be the end of the world.
It's probably an uncommon occurrence to be like only a couple hours into this game and have seen or I don't know if it's all of them, but quite a few of the voices. I don't know how likely or common it is to completely lose your mind on your second run. But yeah, maybe there's more voices that we haven't perceived yet. Okay. So we've kind of explored all these before. Let's see if... I know that there was a little bit of hesitation last time because we were, despite going in there with the idea to commit, we were still a bit like in this cognitive distortion, two realities thing. But maybe this is enough now for us to say, all right, let's just fully commit to the idea of like no hesitation. Don't buy anything the narrator says. Let's just
warning.
Free her.
Before you go any further. She will lie, she will cheat, and she will do everything in her power to stop you from slaying her. Don't believe a word she says. If only you knew what you did to us, you villain.
Oh, it's the smitten. Okay, this actually makes more sense. This actually makes more sense than the hunted. I think it's the hunted, yeah. The hunted probably needs to come into play when we feel danger on multiple sides. Whereas, like, we didn't really feel threatened by the princess. We just saw that this was the only conclusion she could come to about her situation, right? We were willing to lay down our lives for her. So now we're just a complete simp for the princess, which seems like a natural progression for both the character and myself.
Excuse me?
She's divine!
Forget he said anything. But he is a villain. He made our beloved brutally take our life last time. He is trying to keep us apart, but he won't be able to withstand the power of our love.
See, I think it's the voice of the smitten that's been sort of laying in the undercurrent of my beliefs this whole time. That's why I trusted the razor, because deep down, I'm just madly in love. And I can't remove myself from that, despite blaring evidence that tells me she's also gonna kill me.
Last time? What are you talking about? I think he just likes to hear the sound of his own voice. Let's try to ignore him.
This isn't a three-party love affair, narrator. Like I said, I'm doing a roleplay here. I always think it's really obvious when I'm like being serious therapist Brady and being like fucking crazy like character Brady, like I'm adopting their voices, but maybe it's not actually so obvious sometimes, because some people are like, how could you be confused by this? Like, I let myself get carried away by what we're seeing here.
I do, but I also speak from the heart. My passion passions are too great to be stifled.
That's right.
They must be expressed.
That's right.
Sure, yeah, your passions are strong and all, but not everyone needs to hear them. Some things are better kept quiet.
I'd rather make my love known.
Don't pay their bickering any mind. Focus on the task ahead.
We'll proceed to the cabin. Now, will the cabin appear any different?
The interior of the cabin is clean and elegant, its stone walls draped in fine threaded tapestries, a prison befitting a royal prisoner. The only furniture of note is an ornate wooden table with a pristine blade perched on its edge.
Oh, yes, of course she lives here.
The blade is your implement. You'll need it if you want to do this right.
I imagine the smitten thinks he has a very different kind of implement. I'm curious if we... It's my curiosity that always gets me into trouble, but I do kind of want to see the mirror.
You walk up to the wall next to the basement door. It's a wall. There isn't much to see here.
It kind of makes sense that the smitten is appealing to vanity in some way.
What are you talking about? This isn't a wall. It's a mirror. Or at least it'll be a mirror once we wipe off that layer of grime.
Let's wipe the grime.
You reach forward and rub your hand against the cabin wall. I hope you know how ridiculous you look right now. But there was a mirror a second ago, and now it's gone. Pity. We could have a feather out of place, and now we'll never know.
Yeah.
We can't gallantly sweep her off her feet if we have a feather out of place.
It totally makes sense that the smitten would, like, prepare himself for the princess. All right. On to the basement.
The door to the basement creaks open, revealing an intricate gold-trimmed carpet glimmers in the light of the torches positioned along the walls. The basement almost seems welcoming in the dim firelight.
Yes. Candelabras fitting for only the most royal, pristine entity.
But it's still a stone basement. If the princess lives here, slaying her is probably doing her a favor.
Now, it's very likely that the smitten, probably the most confirmation bias afflicted, will literally do anything. Actually, I actually have a better term for you than confirmation bias, which is incidentally one of my favorite psychology terms. It's even become kind of a meme on my channel if you were here for the really OG days. And it's called a parataxic distortion, which is a very specific kind of reality bending distortion. Which is basically, it happens a lot with romantic situations. Usually when people get into relationships, they have an ideal about their partner, what they're like, and it's basically like expectations based on fantasy. They're not really based on reality necessarily, and they also don't tend to update with new information. Like I might meet someone and be like, wow, she's just like the most intellectual, beautiful, kind person, and like I just get so invested in this fantasy. When I see things to the contrary, I don't update that idea and say like, oh, I guess she's just like a normal person who's capable of like making mistakes, you know, doesn't always look her best, as none of us do, right? And has moments where, you know, their insight is limited, like most people, right? Let me just update that idea, come up with a new picture of who she is, and move along with a clearer picture of reality. Or I could be like, but this is not this, you know what? You've changed. You used to be perfect, right? It destroys relationships because people don't actually want to believe like the realistic version of a person. They like the fantasy. And then they feel like cheated basically out of that when the fantasy turns out to not be accurate. Well, the smitten has obviously a parataxic distortion. Like, we haven't even seen the princess yet, and we have already decided that she is flawless.
A soft voice carries up the stairs.
Watch her not be.
Hello? Is someone there?
Watch her be like flawed in some way, or do something grotesque, like bite her fucking hand off, and the smitten just ignore it. Or just, instead of updating his idea to fit reality, he'll just update the distortion and say, but I like her like this.
Her voice. It's somehow even more beautiful than last time.
Yeah.
I think we're in love.
In love without even perceiving her yet.
Okay, I'm with you that we should be doing whatever we can to save her, but saying we're in love is a bit much, don't you think?
The rational mind of the hero, though, can clearly see that, like, okay, let's not assume perfection before we've had any information.
We don't even know the princess. We can still do right by her without all this fawning.
Yeah.
Yes, for everyone's sake, you're not in love. Just remember that her charms are all part of the manipulation.
Remains to be seen. I've already decided I'm in love.
You walk down the stairs and lock eyes with the princess. There's a heavy chain around her wrist, binding her to the far wall. My love! Rescue you from your unjust and foul imprisonment.
That's right.
You know she can't hear you, right?
What?
She may not be able to hear my words, but surely she can hear.
Oh, I guess it can only hear the voice of the hero.
Oh, your spirit's plenty loud, all right.
It's you, my dashing hero. I was so worried you wouldn't come back.
I'm here. I'm here to save you.
Do you hear that? She said we're dashing. And she called us a hero. It really goes a long way with the two of you, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
Waiting for you to come back. You've been here before, haven't you?
Again, the narrator is actually willing to update its view of reality, even if it doesn't fit its agenda, which is interesting. The narrator is not under the kinds of weird psychological delusion mechanisms that you and I as people have developed. I'm curious how that plays out over time.
That's right, villain, and you killed us.
Technically, he did. Technically, it wasn't the princess's fault. The narrator made her do it. There's no way she could be flawed.
Well, she killed us.
No. The narrator made her do it.
Only because he made us try and kill her. It was self-defense. Our beloved's hands remain unstained by cruelty.
Unstained. They're unstained, guys.
You've died before. So an entire world has been damned to oblivion. I'd really hoped I'd be the first, but what's done is done.
I don't care.
Is you have a chance to do it right this time.
I'll surrender the whole world if it means I can save the princess.
We damned a whole world. But everything reset. Nothing resets, you're just somewhere else. And you can't keep hopping between worlds forever. Especially not without leaving a trail of incomprehensible devastation behind you. This is horrible.
I don't think it's very horrible. I think it's quite divine. Okay, so what is the smitten feeling right now? The smitten probably feels this. I'm sorry about what happened last time. The narrator who sent me here to kill you took over my body. It was extremely unfair. The smitten may be a bit concerned that the princess is a bit skeptical of us. And we want to do anything to preserve the perception of the dashing hero.
If another version of me was pushed to such drastic action, it was for good reason.
That's okay. You were just doing your best, and that's all that matters.
I was just doing my best. Thank you, princess.
She took that in stride. To a surprising extent. An almost unsettling extent, actually. That's because she's perfect.
This is the definition of a parataxic distortion.
She has someone like him telling her what to do.
I didn't even consider that. That she has someone like the narrator telling her what to do? Interesting.
Doesn't. There's no one else like me.
That you know of.
Right, because I like it better if she doesn't have some horrid little voice like him, always trying to drive her to violence.
Okay, we're here to rescue her. That's our sole purpose.
Rescue her? What are you talking about? Did you forget that she's a world-ending monstrosity? And even if you wanted to unleash her onto the world, despite the complete moral disaster that would be, you'd have to get her out of those chains. Good luck with that.
I am curious what the smitten comes up with this time.
Don't you see how dainty her hands are? We'll be able to slip her out with ease.
Okay.
No, she's a prisoner here. You can't just slip her hand through the chains.
I am really curious to see what the smitten thinks about her disarming herself like that.
Her hand could just slip out of the chains. Why hasn't she done it already?
That's kind of the question I've been asking.
Because we've yet to present her with her freedom.
That's right. Oh, the distortion goes hard.
I'm not sure I follow. Would you rather believe me, a passionate heart guided by love and my own good nature? Or would you rather believe the devil on your shoulder who tells you what you can and cannot do?
Interesting.
I think I'd rather believe in facts. Ah, so you're one of those empiricists.
Literally feelings more important than facts to the smitten.
One of us has to be. Let me show you a brand new truth. Narrator, we courageously step forward and free our beloved from her bindings.
He's literally trying to force reality to bend to his perception in complete denial of any facts around the situation.
No, I can't let you do that. If you take another step towards the princess, You'll what? Take over our body and force us to try and kill her?
The princess will save us.
I would if you had a weapon.
There's no weapon here.
Not on my watch, villain. My passions contain titanic depths, and if you try anything that might harm our dearest, I will end our life without a second thought. You wouldn't.
We would.
I would.
Oh my god.
Listen to him if I were you. He has a lot of strong feelings. And doesn't the world end if we don't stop her?
Doesn't matter.
You approach the princess and gingerly slide her hand from her bindings. That shouldn't have worked.
Wow. It actually worked.
Dude.
So if our voices are passionate enough, the deeper we are into our own delusion, the more reality and her is shaped by that. So the deeper we got into insanity last time and sort of like on the defense, the crazier and crazier and more dangerous she got. We're so deep in the parataxic distortion of her being perfect that this shit just works, apparently.
Believe it. But I guess I have to. I told you, there's no life more worth living than that of a true believer.
I'm free, and you're not trying to kill me this time. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, princess.
The princess jumps up and smothers you in a joyful embrace. Ugh.
What horrible thing will happen?
If only you had a weapon, one slip of the wrist and your pristine blade would be buried in her back and everyone out there would be saved. Luckily for Mr. Romance, we don't have a weapon.
That's right.
Who needs a weapon when we have the power on our side?
What do we do now?
We leave. We leave. God damn it. God damn it. Why does this keep happening? And then we have our whole lives ahead of us to figure out what to do next.
That sounds perfect.
Suddenly, uplifting, triumphant music plays.
The princess takes your hand, the last hopes of the entire world slipping through your fingers as they intertwine with hers.
Oh. Can I just stay in the delusion at least a little bit? This is nice.
We have each other. We don't need the world for our happy ending. I like to think that you do, actually.
Actually, we don't.
Look, I have my doubts, but the choice has been made and this is happening. You don't have to mope about it.
Yeah. Just be happy for once, narrator.
I will mope about it, because moping is the only recourse you love-blind fools have left me with. You and the princess walk up the stairs hand in hand. Ugh, look at the way she's smiling at you. She doesn't have to be so happy about this. And what happens after we walk up the stairs?
Okay, here's the real trial. What way are we going to bend reality to make sense of whatever's about to happen?
Let's see. Oh, isn't that interesting? The door slams in your face and the lock clicks.
No, narrator, you're not involved. Like I said, this is a two-party love affair.
That's a familiar move. Did I do that last time? Then you should know that you won't be able to leave.
Mitt?
Oh no! Did someone lock us in here? That's not fair. We're supposed to leave now.
She's right. It isn't fair. But the unfairnesses of the world are no match for the strength of true love.
Correct.
Enough with this true love nonsense. You just met her.
I know perfection when I see it.
Of course you wouldn't understand. Our passions run deeper than anything you have ever known.
Oh, man.
Are you listening to this? With every whim of that delusional voice.
What you recognize as delusion, I recognize as passion.
I'm just along for the ride at this point.
Oh, man. I think we can open it if we just try together.
Okay. Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. It'll be our victory.
Like a pair of teenagers in love, you and the princess place your hands on the door. Together. Blech. And...
We burst free to life happily ever after.
the lock clicks and the door creaks open. Are you kidding me?
For real? For real, for real?
I told you our love was insurmountable.
No way.
You and the princess make your way upstairs, and... The blade, that's right, there's still a chance for you to do the right thing. Take the blade from the table and slay her before it's too late.
Oh my god. I'm having a trauma response now. I'm remembering all the chaos that came. Should I take the blade? Maybe I should take the blade. Part of me's not sure, guys. This comes down to, does Brady believe that true love is really possible? Does our last experience tell us that this is the moment where the facade pulls back and we have to reckon with the other extreme of reality, which is that no one can be trusted, not even ourselves? Honestly, maybe we try this route again next time and see what happens if we take the blade, but I think the voice of the smitten is so powerful right now that it's able to resist the slight edge of skepticism that sort of underlies our character's perspective. I'm not doing that. Love wins this time.
You're enjoying this, aren't you? You're taking every opportunity you can to draw out the end of the world and make me suffer. I hate you.
The deeper our love goes, the deeper your hate for me manifests, I see.
You know, if her walking out that door is really going to end the world, can't we all just stay here? Seems like an easy win for everyone.
That's right. We don't need the world to be in love. We just need our own private space.
That's not how this works. Yes, what he said. That's not how this works. Obviously, we have to leave with her. It's our happy ending.
Oh, maybe another... We have another branch here, maybe. What if we just stayed here and built a life together? Stop it with the interruptions. Okay, this is a point where I'm making decisions based on what the overriding voice and what I think the layers of understanding of my current state of mind are. I'm not trying to make an optimal decision that's going to get me the right ending for the game. I'm trying to make something that's going to lead to good storytelling so that I can process it with you. And to me, like, if the smitten is able to override the opportunity to take the blade and choose a different path, then we have enough conviction to demand that these interruptions cease and follow the mind that's been made up since before we even laid eyes on the princess, which is that she's perfect, we will have the life we want, we're leaving. Even if this completely fucks the ending. I think that's what we would do.
Yes, I suppose you are going to do that, aren't you? You cross the room, opening the door to the cabin.
Maybe it just works out.
And then you step outside.
Oh,
A happy ending at last.
okay.
We did it. What should we do now?
Oh no. No. I know that sound. I'm about to lose you, aren't I?
Where did everything go? Where did he go? Oh, is he gone? I hadn't noticed. I was too busy staring deep into our beloved's eyes.
I'm cold. Is being happy supposed to be so cold?
Oh, fuck. We're gonna have to watch her die, aren't we? All of that true love, such burning passion, all decisions, rational or not, being won over by pure passion. And the cost of that is having to watch the one you made it all for slip away.
She's cold. Quick, our feathers. Pluck them all and weave her a coat worthy of a princess.
Oh man, the smitten. The smitten is gonna be hurt more than anyone. But you don't get the chance to make that jacket. Nor will you ever. It's time for you to leave. Memory returns.
She's gone. Where did she go? Should we try and find her? And is that a mirror? Why is it here? Why now?
It's going to be okay, just trust me. We've been here before and you always get scared. Now, where is this coming from? I mean, this is not the hero's choices. This is us. Usually we decide what the hero is going to say with these choices, but right now we're actually talking directly to the hero. I think it makes sense for me to reassure the hero that this is okay. It's okay for it all to be over now. Just trust me. We've been here before. You always get scared.
But it feels so bad. Like looking into it right now is going to be the end of everything. Yes, I fear that we won't like what we'll see. What if we just sit here and preen for a while? That can't hurt, right?
Oh, Smitten. Everything can hurt with enough emotion behind it. I'll see you on the other side. It's going to be okay.
Okay. If you say so, we'll trust you. She'll be there waiting for us. I just know it.
Well, she probably won't. But it's okay if you believe that. You approach the mirror. Silence as you reach forward. They're gone once again. The mirror always makes them leave, but you need to see what's in it. You've withered. You find yourself in the long quiet once again. To the cabin. You're at the cabin.
I am a growing chorus of contradiction.
No way.
Of tides ebbing and flowing all at once inward.
No fucking way.
Tension can bear to hold. To look at any one is to shift them all into something new. And to look away is to reshape them yet again.
Interesting how it all became about contradictions. I might actually have a psychic connection with this game.
All of me is changing, and yet the rest of me is still the same.
Yeah. I think this is true in more ways than one. The idea that, like, whether it's behavioral change, personality change, or reckoning with your emotions, somewhere along the path, you cannot just be an extreme of this direction or an extreme of that direction. There is some banking along the way. And in the midst of that, transitioning from one way of being or one way of thinking is going to mean that there's going to be two ideas that are held at the same time that don't necessarily agree. And it is our choice and our personal work to understand that that's natural and to reconcile the perception. Like start from here. Start from here. Don't look out there. Don't look out there and say, well, it's okay for me to do these two incompatible things because reality is like this. You have to look at yourself and see, like, am I the one who is at odds with myself and in some sort of contradiction? How can you stand to be a contradiction? Let's explore this. What does it feel like to be in the process of change and knowing that in that process, there's going to be an intermediate point where not everything really makes sense?
As easily as you can stand to be you. You are like me, even if you have chosen not to look at the corners of you that do not fit. Even if you have chosen to ignore the brilliant contours of your soul.
Interesting. Before, the entity has talked mostly about itself, but it's interesting to get observations of us from it. And I think it makes sense for us to wonder at this because part of the deceit, the self-deceit that we practice is, I'm not in contradiction with myself. Everything I do is consistent. It makes sense for my apartment to be clean and my car to be a mess. I don't live in my car, right? I think we believe that we're consistent when we're not. So let's see what the entity says. If we go with this, contradictions don't exist, you can't be one.
And yet my waters flow and my streets bustle. There are no words that can describe me into non-existence. There is no logic that can bind my multitudes.
She's essentially saying that we're going to bring her many perspectives, and they're not always going to be consistent with each other either. How do you reconcile the damsel and its perception belonging to the same entity as the razor?
I am everything that you have known me to be, but I am also none of it.
It doesn't matter how many times I go back, at least one of us always hurts the other. Doesn't that change you? Doesn't that make it worse? Which, yeah, this is why I push back on the idea that, like, oh, well, your hero's not supposed to remember everything. But every time we arrive at the entity, we do remember. Like, the bottom layer of our character is whatever chapter route we're in right now. But above that is, like, who we are when we're looking at this, which is that we remember everything that's past. Doesn't this make it worse for you that we always hurt each other?
It changes me, but it doesn't make me worse, nor does it make me care for you any less. Does it make you worse? Do you resent me?
No. I have no opinion one way or the other. If anything, it makes me like you more. I don't know what that says about me. Well, I think it's the universality. We are both iterating on who we are, trying things, succeeding at some, failing at others. Failure has been communicated to us as not a condition of dying. Success has been communicated to us not as a condition of saving her. We succeeded in this playthrough of getting her out without either of us dying, and we're still here. We have failed multiple times in the last run with the razor. And yet we became successful in purging our mind of its many chaotic perspectives. Like, failure and success are not linear translations of action in the storyline that we're in, for us nor for her. So that makes it relatable, and it makes me like it more.
It says that your heart is gentle, that even in the darkness you are guided by compassion.
What do you think of this vessel?
This one is soft and delicate. You molded her to love you, and she'll make for a gentle heart.
My theory on one of this game's themes seems to be bearing out, which is that we are providing the entity with perspectives that increase its emotional range. And the razor, probably by itself, is such a chaotic headspace to live in and totally dysfunctional for like general mind, right? But tempered by a gentle heart in the damsel, perhaps they can coexist, and she can both have a heartfelt center and a defensive nature that will do anything to survive, even enjoy the process.
Do not mourn her. She has served her purpose.
Okay. Do you know what happens to the worlds we leave behind?
My perspectives are shadowed. You have seen what I have seen, just as I have seen what you have seen. The angles of my vantage do not offer me hidden truths, and my attention is turned inward, except when you are here with me.
Yeah, we only are able to perceive the combination or the sequence of these journeys when we're here, not so much when we are in the distinct chapter, which makes sense. The hero we were today does not remember the razor, but I remember, as whatever character we're looking at right now, the composition of all of them.
Perhaps this will change when our work is done.
I think we've asked some of these other ones, so I'm ready to go back.
I will be here when it is time for us to meet again.
Okay. I was ready for that time. Oh. Well, we saved the princess.
You're on a path in the woods, and at the end of that path is a cabin. And in the basement of that cabin is a princess.
Okay. A very different storyline that we've followed today. Not so much unraveling of my own mindset, but I do think a deeper understanding of where our decisions are coming from and how we sort of don't always make the most logical, consistent conclusions. It's interesting. It'll be interesting to see where we go from here, though, because now that I've been around 3 times, and again, assuming the perspective of this character, the stakes of individual paths have lowered. As in, I'm no longer concerned about surviving, something like the razor. I'm no longer concerned about saving the princess. I've done a full chaos run. I've done a pure love run now. My character remembers that. Now its objective is not self-interest, but how do I fill out that emotional range of the entity? How do I bring it the most diverse perspectives that I can? Which means it's now time to start making some decisions that we may have crossed over a little bit, and choosing diversions from those paths. Like, for example, saving the princess up to the point where we have the blade, right? So I think it's time we explore some of those. All right. And that is going to do it for today's episode of Therapist Plays Slay the Princess. I'm so appreciative of so many of you coming along for this journey and enjoying what we're doing here. I'm looking forward to more from this game and whatever we do next, because there will always be more. So thank you for watching. I appreciate your time and your enjoyment, and I hope to see you again very soon.